There's no denying that driving for Ferrari is one of the biggest honours in motorsport. From drivers like Niki Lauda, Michael Schumacher and Gerhard Burger, it is something every F1 driver dreams about.
Since child I've always been looking at the red car and
In the winter of 2023, the unthinkable happened.
From the world of Formula One, and it looks like Lewis Hamilton is going to be leaving Mercedes and joining Ferrari.
The move sent shockwaves through the paddock. Now 1 year later, it has finally happened and Lewis Hamilton has set foot in Maranello for the first time in his career. But at 100 million a year and Lewis aged 40, why did Ferrari sign him? What was it like for Lewis Hamilton's first days at Ferrari? Widely considered one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen, Lewis Hamilton was welcomed to a roaring reception on his first day at Maranello. In fact, the whole Ferrari factory formed a guard of honour for the 7-time champ to enter, something not even Sebastian Vettel received after switching. The energy was electric around the Ferrari factory, and with so much anticipation, everyone was excited to see what he'd do once he got inside the car for the first time. Since testing the new car might have been more valuable, the FIA has strict rules regarding the use of the current models, but Ferrari has an SF23 used during the 2023 season already bearing the former Mercedes driver's number. Another striking difference fans immediately noted was that Lewis changed his helmet once again. For those hardcore F1 fans, the new helmet might be somewhat nostalgic. Lewis, who is a massive fan of Ayrton Senna, began his career with this iconic helmet. He later switched to red and finally to purple before bringing back glimpses of the yellow in his final 2 seasons with Mercedes. Perhaps something else to get used to is the prancing horse logo valiantly displayed across the brim of his helmet, replacing the now dated Mercedes logo we have all become used to. But Lewis was ready to start his first lap. Unfortunately, the Maranello test track was not at its best. Cold weather and wet track meant that it would be the school of hard knocks for Lewis. On 9/16, as reported on the official X account of Scuderia Ferrari, Lewis set out from the pit lane despite the foggy and miserable conditions. A crowd of 1,000 strong was beside the track to see the former champion do what he does best. Despite none of the actual times being released and no one having anything to compare them by, the overall result of the test was fairly positive according to the Ferrari faithful. Lewis and new race engineer Riccardo Adami were described as positive. Bear in mind that Adami is an accomplished engineer, having been with the likes of Sebastian Vettel and more recently Carlos Sainz. From what the media could gather, there was only one thing Lewis disliked about the Ferrari: the steering wheel. But if you think back to his days at Mercedes, it was very rare for Lewis to actually change the steering wheel configuration, and he insisted on reverting it back to the same design he had at Mercedes. Now, for those who think Lewis might be sharing information with a competitor, it's not the case. Formula One steering wheels all have the same features, it's just the setups that differ depending on what the driver favours. For Lewis, the Mercedes configuration helped him earn 6 titles for the British manufacturer. But with pre-season testing still a bit far away, a lot of speculation is currently crowding the rumour mill. Will Lewis be the second driver to Leclerc, or will Lewis want to become an 8-time world champ?
To your future partner at Ferrari, what do you look for in a teammate?
Hello, Lewis.
It's no secret Lewis and Charles haven't always seen eye to eye. Just think back to the 2019 Formula One season when a young Leclerc won at both Spa and Monza. On many occasions the two would fight for the lead, often leading to some interesting team radios. Another important fact to consider is that Charles has been part of the Ferrari project since being a young driver. In fact, he was naturally groomed to take over from Sebastian Vettel as team leader. Leclerc also came closest to challenging Verstappen for the 2022 World Drivers' Championship. All these factors make it less likely that Lewis will be the #1 driver. On the other hand, Hamilton is on a whopping $100 million a year contract. This is almost 5 times what Leclerc earns, and the Scuderia would not simply splash out this much cash for a second driver. Hamilton is also a 7-time champ, bringing years of experience and technical aptitude that the Scuderia desperately needs. And finally, the Brit is known for being a strategic genius. Just have a look at the 2020 Turkish Grand Prix when Lewis pulled off the unthinkable by running the intermediate tyre on a slick track to the end. But his biggest flaw, well, that is age. Lewis is now 40 and history has proven that once drivers pass this milestone they significantly drop off. Well, Alonso might be a different story, but no one in the modern era has managed to win an F1 Drivers' Championship at this age. Lewis is also teetering on the edge of retirement. So with Lewis being older and Leclerc still the future of the Scuderia, it doesn't seem likely that team orders will be used in the early goings of the 2025 season. Perhaps the Scuderia might just settle for papaya rules and let the two battle it out on track. Nevertheless, it will all come down to how quickly Lewis manages to adapt to the new engine and chassis. That said, what does 2025 look like for the 7-time champ? Well, first of all, we need to consider the car Ferrari will be giving their drivers. The SF25 will definitely build on the success of its predecessor, which seemed to be the fastest car in a straight line by the end of 2024. Despite struggling around high-speed corners, it offers far better traction at low-speed tracks with long straights. Tracks like Bahrain and Kota quickly come to mind. With the 2026 regulation changes also a looming threat, Ferrari might consider shifting their focus to 2026 if the season doesn't pan out as planned. However, it is a sure thing that the Scuderia will want to challenge the Red Bull and McLarens in the early goings. Should everything be ideal, there still isn't any reason to believe Ferrari can win the championship with Lewis on board. Let's face it, Carlos is not a bad driver himself and occasionally outperformed Leclerc in the same machinery. Lewis and Charles will probably trade a few good performances while the main battle between Red Bull's Verstappen and McLaren's Norris keeps hotting up for another season. Ultimately, we believe that Ferrari will be very similar to what Mercedes had been last year. The one bonus now is that Lewis will bring in a lot of money through his various sponsors and the stands will be packed each weekend with the Scuderia and Hamilton fans. So if things didn't change, why was Lewis hired in the first place? The marketing aspect of F1 is becoming more and more important. The more fans you have, the more money you generate, and Lewis Hamilton is as close to a cash cow as you would get. But it's not only this. You see, Lewis is well liked and well connected. As seen with Aston Martin, the top engineers often want to work with the best drivers. When we talk about accolades, no one is so star-studded as Sir Lewis Hamilton himself. Perhaps this could be a way for Ferrari to lure some of the top staff in the paddock to Maranello. Ferrari could also be using Lewis to gain some competitive advantage due to his knowledge of the sport. But it's clear that Hamilton will be an excellent mentor for Charles, much like he has helped Russell grow a pair to challenge Verstappen. Ultimately, it will be very interesting to see what Lewis can accomplish with the Scuderia and whether or not he can help break the championship drought Italy has been facing in all sports. Having Lewis on board is one of the biggest moves in Formula One history, but at $100 million a year and running into his 40s, do you think this was a wise move? Or should Ferrari have sought out someone else? The fact remains that the one man benefiting most from this is the young Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who replaces Lewis and is one of the youngest drivers on the grid.